Yamuna Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Radhamayam Dhanata Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuddhavadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Samadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharye Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatayeshwarye Mancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Charanarottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtapreshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhakti Nashtihi So much more ready. Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Not a good morning. It's a good morning. I say it's good. Why? Because this morning we can read from Srimad Bhagavatam. How fortunate we are. And we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, Mahārāja Pṛthu's going back home. And this is verse 39, which is the very last verse of the chapter. It's the last verse of the entire description of Mahārāja Pṛthu's pastimes, his adventures. And so we can try to recite. This verse is an unusual meter. And I must say, I couldn't really catch how to chant it nicely. It has the first and third lines are shorter than the second and fourth lines. So anyway, we do what we can. Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Sacha nipuṇāṁ labhate ratim manuṣyaḥ.
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 Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Sacha nipuṇāṁ labhate ratim manuṣyaḥ.
Sacha nipuṇāṁ labhate ratim manuṣyaḥ.
Others?
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Sacha nipuṇāṁ labhate ratim manuṣyaḥ.
Sacha nipuṇāṁ labhate ratim manuṣyaḥ.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Sacha nipuṇāṁ labhate ratim manuṣyaḥ.
Sacha nipuṇāṁ labhate ratim manuṣyaḥ.
Please.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Sacha nipuṇāṁ ratim manuṣyaḥ.
Sacha nipuṇāṁ labhate ratim manuṣyaḥ.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Anu-dinam idam ādareṇa śṛṇvan.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Pṛthu-caritam prathayan vimukta-saṅgaḥ.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde.
Bhagavati bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde. Sacha nipuṇāṁ labhate ratim manuṣyaḥ.
Yeah. So, what does it mean? Anu-dinam.
Anu-dinam.
Day after day.
Day after day.
Idam.
Idam.
This.
This.
Ādareṇa.
Ādareṇa.
With great respect.
With great respect.
śṛṇvan.
śṛṇvan.
Hearing.
Hearing.
pṛthu-caritam.
Pṛthu-caritam.
The narration of Pṛthu Mahārāja.
Narration of Pṛthu Mahārāja.
Prathayan.
Prathayan.
Chanting.
Chanting.
Vimukta. Liberated.
Liberated.
Saṅgaḥ.
Association.
Bhagavati.
Bhagavati.
Unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Bhava-sindhu. What's that mean?
The existence.
Yes, the ocean of nescience.
The ocean of nescience.
Pota. The boat.
The boat.
Pāde. Whose lotus feet.
Whose lotus feet.
Saha. He. Cha. Also. Nipuṇāṁ. Complete. Labhate. Achieves. Ratim. Attachment. manuṣyaḥ. The person. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace ISKCON Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: whoever, with great reverence and adoration, regularly reads, chants, and describes the history of Mahārāja Pṛthu's activities will certainly increase unflinching faith and attraction for the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord's lotus feet are the boat by which one can cross the ocean of nescience. You know this word unflinching? Unflinching. When you flinch, it's when you sort of, somebody pokes you in the stomach, you flinch. So to be unflinching is, even if someone pokes you, you're not disturbed. So unflinching faith. Purport: the word bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde is significant in this verse. The lotus feet of the Lord are known as mahat-padam. This means that the total source of material existence rests on the lotus feet of the Lord. As stated in Bhagavad-gita 10.8, aham sarvasya prabhava.
Sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha-bhava samamvitaha.
Prabhupada just quoted the first line. Everything is emanating from Him. This cosmic manifestation, which is compared to an ocean of nescience, is also resting on the lotus feet of the Lord. as such, this great ocean of nescience is minimized by a person who is a pure devotee. One who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord need not cross over the ocean, for he's already crossed it by virtue of his position at the Lord's lotus feet. By hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord, or the Lord's devotee, one can become firmly fixed in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. This position can also be achieved very easily by narrating the history of the life of Pṛthu Mahārāja regularly every day. The word vimukta-saṅgaḥ is also significant in this connection, because we associate with the three qualities of material nature. Our position in this material world is full of dangers. But when we engage in the devotional service of the Lord by the process of śṛṇvan and kirtanam, we immediately become vimukta-saṅgaḥ, or liberated. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 23rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Mahārāja Pṛthu's Going Back Home. So Mahārāja Pṛthu's Going Back Home is a devotional success story. There are many devotional success stories in the Bhagavatam, and they generally, we can say, they give us inspiration. Oh, there's hope. We can become, we can follow in their footsteps, and we can also go to the transcendental spiritual abode. I say generally, why? Because it could have the opposite effect. We could read and we could say, oh yeah, well, what do you expect? This is Pṛthu, King Pṛthu. And after all, King Pṛthu is what is he? He's a Shakti Avesha avatar, right? Am I a Shakti Avesha avatar of anything or anyone? Forget it. So, what's the use? What's the hope? That sense could be there. Also, all these descriptions of outstanding Bhagavatas. It's called the Bhagavata Purana because it's about Bhagavatas and about the activities of Bhagavatas. So there's the word Bhagavan, and then a Bhagavata, with a long A, is anyone related to Bhagavan. So all these stories, we might feel that they are beyond our grasp, in the sense of they may feel fantastic, too fantastical. And therefore a sort of the tendency that most people have in hearing, reading these accounts is, this is mythology. And therefore it's dismissible. And mythology, the term, unfortunately, has come to mean fiction. Although originally myth was not fiction. Myth was deeper reality. It was the truth behind the apparent ways of the world. And so, while Prabhupada insists repeatedly that these accounts are history, he explains the word itihasa as history, because itihasa, this is a typical expression in the Upanishads, iti, thus, ha, indeed, asa, it happened, is the word itihasa. But someone may still feel, it's really a stretch to call this history. History is what we can identify by modern historical understanding, and we can't do that with what we find in the Bhagavatam. Well, one way of appreciating, I would say, the Bhagavatam is to give maybe a crude analogy. Back in the old days, before your time, there was, in photography, you had actual film, not just digital, invisible ones and zeros, but you had physical film. Negatives. Yes, that's what I want to say. And black and white negative. When you look at it, everything is reversed, isn't it? One of my first services when I joined the temple was to develop black and white film that our GBC at that time had been making photos of Srila Prabhupada. And I was given a little closet in the Heidelberg temple that I could make into a dark room, and there I could develop the film and print the prints. And it was an interesting experience. When you develop a print, after you expose it, you put it in this chemical bath, and the image gradually manifests. From white paper, gradually you see the image. And so I was gradually seeing images of Srila Prabhupada, one after another. But here my analogy is that how we're seeing the world so-called normally, we may want to say, is really like the black and white negative. We're seeing the negative, and the positive, the inverse of everything we see. That's what the Bhagavatam is offering. It's offering a reality which is, it's right there before us, and yet we get it all inverted. We don't see, and therefore we find it difficult to grasp. This verse is giving us, it's a palashruti, it's a common ending of a chapter in the Bhagavatam. Sometimes when there are several chapters of a particular narrative, then the palashruti comes at the end of a few chapters. Palashruti, what is palashruti? Pala means fruit, and shruti means what is heard. So it's the fruit of hearing. And so we get very typically verses at the end of chapters that tell us, you are getting the prize. You have heard this account, and now you're going to get the result of hearing this account. We want to know, whenever we do anything, what's going to be in it for me? What's going to be the result? Right? What's in it for me? So Shastras tell us what's in it for us. In this case, what's in it for us, what benefit is there for us, is a spiritual benefit, because the Bhagavatam is this inverse of our reverse vision. And so it's saying, if we hear this or read it or recite it, it says daily. Daily we can recite the Bhagavatam. Well, we recite the Bhagavatam in general, but this particular narrative. Which narrative? Pṛthu-caritam. We know the word charita from Chaitanya Charita Amrita, right? Traditionally, a charita was a biography of a king that would be recited by professional reciters whose job it was to glorify the king, to make the king feel good about himself, about his exploits, his conquering all regions and so on. That's the traditional use of charita in relation to kings. Well, then we have Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Charita, the Charita of Chaitanya, which is Amrita. It's no ordinary Charita, it's Amrita Charita. It's nectarian. And why is it so? Because it's about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose every step is a source of inspiration, of nectar. But here it's Pṛthu-carita, and Pṛthu is a king. And what sort of king is he? He is what we might want to call a primordial king. You know this word primordial? Yes, no, maybe. Primordial means super ancient, original, foundational. He is the model of what is a king, what is a leader. We might ask, indeed, why is it we hear so much about kings in the Bhagavatam? What's this? Why is the Bhagavatam so hung up on kings? Right? After all, it's all about bhakti. It's all about devotion, and we don't really expect kings, for the most part, to be engaged in devotional service. But we could also say, well, that's very much the point. One of the major points of the Bhagavatam is that this is the need of human society, beginning with kings. We talked about this yesterday in the Bhakti Shastri course. Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, the king of knowledge, Prabhupada translates. Raja Vidya can also be translated as knowledge for kings. It's completely legitimate in terms of the Sanskrit grammar to say that it's knowledge for kings. Why that's so, I won't get into it. You'll either fall asleep, or you'll get up and leave, or you'll eventually say, that Swami, he just goes into these ridiculous details about things that don't matter. So I won't do that, although it could be interesting for someone. Pṛthu-carita is knowledge of the activities of Pṛthu, and we're encouraged to glorify prathayan. Prathayan, Prabhupada translates as chanting. not translating, as chanting. Prathayan, the verbal root is prat, and it literally means to spread. And then prathayan means to cause to spread. So, welcome to the Sankirtan movement. So someone who spreads the news about such ideal king as Pṛthu is vimukta-saṅgaḥ, is one whose sangha, whose association is liberated, is free, or who is liberated from bad sangha. Prabhupada highlights this longer compound, this samasa, bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde, which is so bear with me, little technical point. Bhagavati, this is Bhagavan, but in the locative form, which means, as Prabhupada translates, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Ratim, attachment. The whole point of the verse is to say that this person, manuṣyaḥ, who is continuously chanting, glorifying Lord Pṛthu, achieves labhate, rati, achieves strong attachment to the Lord. And so bhagavati, to the Lord, who is bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde, one whose feet are a boat, pota, feet boat. What sort of boat? A bhava-sindhu boat. A boat which is floating on top of this ocean of bhava. And bhava, it's important, this is short A, it's not long A, it's not bhava, it's not bhava-sindhu. Bhava-sindhu is a good thing, that we want. We talked about that also yesterday. That we want to swim in, that we want to dive into. We want to drown in the bhava-sindhu. We don't want to drown in the bhava-sindhu. The bhava-sindhu, bhava, well, both come from the verbal root bhu, which means to exist, to be. But there's a world of difference. So, bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde. The feet of the Lord are very special because, as Prabhupada is explaining in the purport, if one can be at those feet, then one has already crossed this ocean. So there's lots and lots and lots of glorification of the Lord's feet. And people may wonder, what is this? What is with these Hare Krishnas? They have a thing about feet. Right? They're always talking about feet. Yes, we do have a thing about feet, but not any feet. We have a thing about God's feet. And God has feet. And He not only has feet, He has all the other features of persons. And as you know from Canto 3, Chapter 21, there's a whole series of verses meditating on, describing meditation on the features of the Lord's body. And one of these, actually it's the first I believe it is. I wrote it down. I think it's so, as we say in America, so cool. And this one has to do with feet, so I'm keeping to our subject here. Yat chocha nisrita sarit pravarotakena tirtena murtnyadikritena shiva shivot bhut dhyaturmana shamala shaila nisrishta vajram dhyayet chidam bhagavatas charanarvindam. The Blessed Lord, Shiva, becomes all the more blessed by bearing on his head the holy waters of the Ganges, which has as its source in the water that washed the Lord's lotus feet. Okay, so we're getting this picture of a chain of connection, right? We know the story that the Lord is bathed. That's called Charanamrita. And this can be a nice meditation whenever you take Charanamrita from the deities. So that water from the lotus feet, it flows down. And what is that water? It's the Ganges, the Ganga. And what happens with that Ganga? It falls down on the head of Lord Shiva. And as a result, Shiva abhut. Shiva becomes Shiva, which could be translated in two ways. One is, as it is here, Lord Shiva becomes Lord Shiva. He becomes who he really is. Or it can mean Shiva becomes auspicious. He can be called Shiva. Why? Because of the water from the Lord's lotus feet coming down. That's kind of cool. Okay, Lord's lotus feet. Yes, now comes the real point. The Lord's feet act like thunderbolts hurled to shatter the mountain of sin stored in the mind of the meditating devotee. Would you like to have such thunderbolt hurled at your mind? Maybe. I'm not so sure. Maybe not. Sounds kind of too much. Maybe I don't really want that. One should. Okay, then we get the last line. Jayet. This is this vidhi-lean form, the optative. It's a kind of imperative. Jayet shiram bhagavatas charanarvindam. Therefore, one should meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord for a long time. Chiram means for a long time. But even if you meditate for a short time, there's benefit. The four Kumaras. What happened with the four Kumaras when they were becoming tourists? They were tourists. They were touring Vaikuntha. They said to each other, "Hey, let's go visit Vaikuntha today, shall we?" Yes, Aaron.
Does it work? Yeah. I remember this one story where the four Kumaras come to the gates of Vaikuntha, and you have the two gatekeepers, and the Kumaras are just look like small naked boys, and the gatekeepers don't want to let them through Lord Vishnu, and they curse the gatekeepers, so then happens the whole the chaos when the gatekeepers fall down to the materialistic world and become Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha.
Yes. Why did they want to stop them? Was it because they were small boys? Or was it something else? They were naked. They weren't following the Vaikuntha dress code. Yeah. Big problem. Okay, so you described very well. But then what happens with the 4 Kumaras? Tasyaravinda Nayana Charanat Kinjalka Mishra Tulasi Makaranda Vayu Antargada Svavivarena Chakaratesham Sankshobam Akshara Jusham Apichitta Tanbo. The Lord comes to the door to see what's the ruckus. You know the word ruckus? No, that's kind of slang English. Ruckus means there's noise, there's people shouting. What's going on here? So Lord Vishnu comes, and as soon as he comes, the 4 Kumaras see the Lord, but they also smell. What do they smell?
Tulasi.
They smell the tulasi, and where is the tulasi? There. Tulsi is on the lotus feet of the Lord, mixed with sandalwood and with the lotus, the saffron of the lotus. So they get this overwhelming experience, which antargata. Now this is interesting. I think it's interesting. The 4 Kumaras are trying to enter Vaikuntha. They've already passed 6 gates, and they've come to the 7th gate. And that's where the trouble starts, and that's where they meet the Lord. This is the 7th and final gate. So they're passing through, they're entering, they're coming into this spiritual space, spiritual realm. But now they're stopped. And then what happens? Antargata svavivarena chakarateshu. The aroma that they smell, it enters into them. It enters into them through their nostrils. So their nostrils become gates through which Krishna, in the form of the smell of the tulsi, the aroma of tulsi, etc., enters. And then what happens? Sankshobam. They're completely shocked and overwhelmed. Sankshobam akshara jusham, even though akshara jusham api, even though they were absorbed and enjoying, jusham is enjoying, even though they were enjoying akshara, the absolute impersonal realization. So that's the 4 Kumaras. That's their result of coming to the feet of the Lord, touching the feet, connecting to the Lord's lotus feet. And for us, we pray, following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ayi Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mang Vishame Vavangido Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stita Duri Sadrisham Vichintaya So, dhuli, what is dhuli? Dust, speck of dust. Sadrisham, sadrisham means like. So, stitaha, let me be standing, let me be situated, let me be fixed, like a speck of dust. And this is another thing people have trouble with. You Hare Krishnas, you're all into feet and you're all into dust. I mean, you know, I'm just trying to get through life, and you're saying we should become dust. I don't know. It seems like you really want to put everybody down. Everyone is dust. But this is very special dust, spiritual dust. And the promise is that as a result of this rati, attachment to the Lord, will take place. What else can we say? Lots of things. Well, Palashruti, I wanted to share with you another Palashruti that's coming up later in, I think it's the 6th canto in the Bhagavatam. And I think this is the longest Palashruti in the Bhagavatam. It's at the end of the story of Gajendra. As you may know, Gajendra was in big trouble. He was able to remember his past life as King Indradyumna, and he was able to remember prayers that he had learned at that time, and he was able to offer those prayers to the Lord, to which the Lord immediately responded. He came charging in on Garuda. No, not charging, flying. He came flying in very fast, and he saves Gajendra. And then at the end of this story we get a Palashruti, in which it says, one who reads or hears or remembers this story, number one, gains reputation as a devotee. Now you may think, oh, but we're not supposed to be worried about reputation, are we? Well, that's true, but still, it's better to be remembered as a devotee than as something else, isn't it? Second, one is unaffected by the contamination of Kali Yuga. Is that something you would like?
Yes.
Then, here's one I think is interesting. One will never see bad dreams. Have you ever had bad dreams? No. Sometimes, maybe. Sometimes weird dreams. Strange, spooky, crazy. I get it all the time. Not all the time. Sometimes I wake up, whoa, what was that? Where did that come from? Hare Krishna. And when that happens, the next advice is, when you get up after such bad or strange dream or crazy dream, then what to do? Chant the story of Gajendra. And then there's several verses where the Lord himself is giving a blessing. He's speaking to Gajendra, and he encourages him and also us to be free from sinful reactions by meditating on, and now he gives a long list of what to meditate on. You can meditate on Lord Vishnu's form, on Gajendra's form, on the lake in which Gajendra was struggling, On the mountain next to the lake? On the caves in that mountain? On the gardens around the lake? On the sugarcane plants in the garden? The bamboo shoots in the garden? On the celestial trees in the gardens? On the Lord's residences, doesn't specify where, on Lord Brahma, on Lord Shiva, on the Trikuta peaks. There are 3 peaks on this mountain, Trikuta, of gold, silver, and iron. On the milk ocean, on Shvetadvip, on the Srivatsa mark, on the Lord's chest, on his Kaustuva gem, on his Vaijayanti garland, which has 5 types of flowers, on his Kamodaki club, on Sudarshan, on Panchajanya, on Garuda, on Sheshanaga. There's more. You want to hear what that's? That's enough. Enough? More. Okay. We're about halfway through. Sheshanaga, Lakshmi, again Brahma, then Narada, again Shiva, then Prahlad, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, not Vamana. He doesn't mention Vamana. But I think it's okay to and they're singing it. On my unlimited auspicious activities, so all of Krishna's leelas, on the sun, on the moon, on fire, on the syllable Om, on the absolute truth, on the Mahatattva, on cows, Brahmins, devotional service, the wives of Soma, the wives of Soma and Kashyapa, who happened to be the daughters of Daksha. How many daughters he had? 60, I think. On Ganga, Saraswati, Yamuna, and Nanda is another river. On Airavata, on Dhruva, on the Sapta Rishis, or you can meditate on pious humans. Hare Krishna. These are all opportunities for getting over boundaries. So he says, can offer prayers that are offered by Gajendra after rising from dead. And the result of this is, the Lord says, I give eternal residence in the spiritual world. Hare Krishna. Okay, so anu-dinam, every day, with reverence, ādareṇa, śṛṇvan, hearing, prathayan, chanting, glorifying, spreading, bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde. We want to be on this boat. Do we want to be on the boat of Krishna's lotus feet? Good place to be. And in this way, what is the result? What's the key word here? Starts with an R. Ratim, attachment. Yes. Do we want to be attached to the Lord?
Yes.
No? Yeah, I guess so. It might be a good idea. Why? Because if we're not attached to the Lord, what are we going to be attached to? forget material world. We're going to be attached to our own bodies, which are deteriorating as we speak and as we listen. Right? Not a good idea. Hare Krishna, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. Some reflections on any of these points? Yes?
Hare Krishna, Mahārāja. I don't know if it's a good question, but the 7 gates, are they located in the same loka? And then I had the connection to the 7 chakras. Is it like going to the 7 gates, going through the 7 chakras?
Interesting. I wouldn't know. As far as where these 7 gates are, when I find out, I'll let you know. You can go there. But this would be all beyond the lokas of this world. There's a very large temple in South India, the Sri Ranganath temple, and they have the temple is surrounded by 7 walls, rectangular, and on each side of each wall is a gate, a gopuram. So there are 28 gopurams. And the innermost gate of, I'm not sure which, whether it's north, south, east, or west side, is the Vaikuntha gate. And that gate is, as I've heard, it's closed for 364 or 3 days of the year, and they open it on 1 day of the year. And that 1 day is called Vaikuntha Ekadashi. And I think it's the same day the Lord wakes up after 4 months of the rainy season. Lord Vishnu has a nice nap, and he's in Yoga Nidra, and then on Vaikuntha Ekadashi, he wakes up. Shayana Ekadashi, I think, is when he goes to bed, and Vaikuntha Ekadashi, he wakes up. And the temple, I've heard, is totally packed. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people want to go through that gate on that day, because when you do that, you've made it. Yeah. Regarding chakras, a devotee once asked Srila Prabhupada about chakras, and Prabhupada responded, "Chakras, no chakras. We are not this body." But there is one other place, I forget now, I saw it recently, where he mentions chakras. But it's not something he emphasized. I would say his main point was, we don't worry about chakras because we don't worry about the body. But it's an interesting parallel. It could be that such connection is made in the tradition. One might have to look in the Sri Vaishnava tradition, in their commentaries. But I wouldn't know. Or else we could ask the 4 Kumars. One time, I believe it was Mother Vishaka asked Srila Prabhupada, how is it that the moon provides the juice of vegetables, because it's mentioned that the moon provides juice for vegetables. That's in the Bhagavatam. So she's asking, how does that work? And Prabhupada said, you'll have to ask the moon. Okay, next question that I can't answer. Yes, this is called Stump the Swami.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. You emphasized on this point on meditation on the Lord's lotus feet. And a few days ago I was having this discussion with some devotee about sadhana and sadhya and these aspects. And then I realized that, at least on a personal level, I do not, in a way, meditate on the sweetness of bhakti so much. Like there is service and it gives you a lot of bliss, definitely, and there is taste. But then there is this sweetness which comes through really harping on certain aspects of meditation. So if you could perhaps give us some insight into how we can really indulge, or not indulge, but really meditate more on the sweetness of bhakti and the Lord's lotus feet on a daily basis.
Where's the nectar? When we say lotus feet, this actually implies service. Being fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord means being fixed in service. Meditating on the lotus feet can mean meditating on one's service, but not just the service, but on the connection to Krishna, that it's for Krishna. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudya cha. Krishna tells Arjuna that therefore, at all times, sarveshu kaleshu, mam anusmara, anu means ongoing, like anu-dinam we had today. And so, ongoing remembrance, anusmara. But smara is another name for Cupid. Think about that one. Anyway, mam anusmara yudya cha. He's speaking to Arjuna, and he's not suggesting that Arjuna think of Cupid, or maybe he is, the transcendental Cupid, Kamadeva. But yudya means fight. So always think of me, and at the same time, do your duty. Now when we think of duty, we don't think of sweetness and nectar. We think, okay, it's something I've got to do. It's my duty, I'm being dutiful. There's no nectar, but I will do it because someday there will be nectar. I hope. I hope. Hope against hope. Well, one thing I encourage devotees to do is to read closely Bhagavatam and appreciate the nectar that's there. In particular, I find it rewarding for myself to look a little bit carefully at the Sanskrit. Prabhupada provides the word for word. And it's possible to appreciate. Prabhupada, of course, brings out sometimes in his purport one or another word or phrase, as we saw today. Bhava-sindhu-pota-pāde. So that can be a source of nectar. But for us, as followers of Lord Chaitanya, where is the real nectar? It's in the pastimes, the life, the being, the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that is so because Lord Chaitanya is Krishna in the mood of Krishna's devotees, or more specifically, the gopis, or more specifically, Srimati Radharani. And he's coming to, he's actually coming to pay back his debt. Krishna has a problem, and his problem is that he cannot reciprocate adequately the love of the gopis. And so what does he do? He comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he comes and he accepts the renounced order, which is the order of, supposed to be the order of austerity. I wonder sometimes. I get the biggest room in the house. I get nice prasadam. Where's the austerity? Anyway, the Lord Chaitanya was sleeping on the ground. He was eating austerely. The point is, he is coming as a renunciant, and as such, he is adopting, he is identifying with the mood of the gopis who were living in complete austerity by virtue of the fact that they were giving up everything for Krishna. So he, Lord Chaitanya, is experiencing that, and as he's experiencing it, what is he doing? Or how does he occupy himself as he's experiencing that? Well, he chants Hare Krishna. He goes to the temple of Lord Jagannath every day and is absorbed in seeing, having darshan of Lord Jagannath. And at the Gambhira where he stays, what is he doing? He's hearing the Bhagavatam. He's hearing especially the verses that Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy are chanting, and what he's chanting, many of those verses are quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita for us to relish. But how do we relish? This is a very nice point, I think, that Madhavananda Prabhu in Puri makes. And it's the mistake, when it's not understood, it's the mistake devotees make, which takes them in the direction of what Prabhupada heavily smashed one time in Los Angeles, the Gopi Baba Club. As it came to be called, the devotees who only wanted to relish those verses, because they didn't understand that the relishing is the remembering, recitation, discussing on behalf of Guru and Krishna. So to please Guru and Krishna, we hear Bhagavatam, and that also helps us to understand why repetition, we hear again and again, why that's a good thing. Because we're hearing on behalf of Guru and Krishna. Yes, I've heard this before, and now I'm hearing it again, and that's pleasing to my Guru, that I'm hearing it again. And it's also what one scholar has called religious reading, as opposed to what he called consumer reading. Consumer reading is, okay, what can I get out of this for myself? I read it once, and if I don't get something, I throw it away. If I get something, I take it and I throw it away. But the reading of a devotee is religious reading, which is reading, hearing again and again, and each time going a little deeper, finding a little more meaning. The word meaning is artha, which is the same as value. Artha is value, artha is meaning. And so we're mining the Shastras. Or as Raja Krishna Prabhu was saying on one of Krishna Prema-rupa Prabhu's interviews for Books Are the Vesas, he likes to read in such a way, it's like pearl diving. He says, I'm searching for pearls when I read. And when I find a pearl, when I find some point that really strikes me, then I bring it up to the surface and I cherish it. So that's what we're after. And that takes some work. It takes some effort. Consumer reading doesn't take much effort. You've heard the expression pulp fiction? Pulp fiction. It's cheap fiction. It's all the novels that are for sale in the airport bookstore. You know. And it's kind of, pulp means after you read it, you can chop up the book and make it into paper mache, you know, do something with it. So some effort has to be there. Is that okay? Okay. Yes.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. So we were discussing the Parashruti these days, and one point that came up in discussion is how does it work that, you know, okay, you recite these narrations and then you get the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing we were discussing is, and also why specifically this pastime has now this benefit. So if you just listen about Pṛthu Mahārāja, then you get liberated. It once was said 3 times you chant this narration, get liberated with faith and devotion. But so the point is, the devotee was then saying that, yeah, basically how he understands is that one associates with Pṛthu Mahārāja in that way, and one gets these characteristics that he has. Is that how you would also see it, or how can we understand that through this recitation and reading, spreading, we get this benefit?
Yeah, we are, in effect, cumulatively replacing whatever in the mind, whatever shamala, as it's called. We read that verse, shamala shaila, the mountain of contamination or distraction, material attachments that are in the mind. They're gradually being replaced. One example could be a cup of water which has some kind of impurity in it. If you keep pouring pure water into that cup, it's going to overflow, and gradually what's in the cup is going to become completely pure. So something like that is what we're trying to do with the whole process of śṛṇvan. We're trying to refill our cup. In the Bible it says, my cup runneth over, my cup of devotion. So that's, I think, one way of explaining it. It's also coming back to this point of we hear and we chant to please Guru and Krishna, and then the Lord responds to that. that's explained. I was just reading. It's in a purport to Canto 10, Chapter 87, Verse 2. It's toward the end of the purport, it's explained. The devotee makes an effort, the sadhaka makes this effort to meditate on the form of the Lord as described in Shastra, and he's not actually, or she is not actually, directly seeing the Lord. But what happens? The Lord sees that effort and then blesses that devotee by taking the devotee to his lotus feet. So it's all about mercy and catching the mercy, putting ourselves in a place to get mercy. And on that note, as the bells ring, I want to wish you a wonderful day today in Krishna's service. Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your kind attention.
Krishna Kshetra Swami Mahārāja ki jai.